Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something, well, a bit different. Our source is just one thing, the Wikipedia page on the flying spaghetti monster.
That's right. And our plan is to really unpack this whole phenomenon using only what's in this source. We'll look at where it came from, what its followers believe, and how it's had this surprisingly big impact, including all the legal stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. You start with this satirical letter about teaching intelligent design in schools, and somehow it snowballs into a movement with tenets, holidays, even lawsuits.
Exactly. It started as satire, but took on a life of its own.
Okay, get ready, because this is where it gets really interesting. So let's dive into the origins. The source points us to Bobby Henderson. He was a physics grad from Oregon State, and this all started back in 2005.
Right. And it was specifically triggered by the Kansas State Board of Education. They were looking at including intelligent design in the science curriculum.
Which Henderson wasn't happy about, so he wrote this open letter to them, a protest, really.
And his main point was, look, if you're going to allow intelligent design, which talks about some vague, unnamed creator.
Then his belief should get equal time, too.
Exactly. His belief in a flying spaghetti monster creating the universe. He wasn't just making a philosophical point. He literally demanded equal classroom time for flying spaghetti monsterism alongside evolution and intelligent design.
And there's that great quote in the source capturing his argument. He said something like, I think we can all look forward to the time when these three theories are given equal time. 1/3 time for intelligent design, 1/3 time for flying spaghetti monsterism, and 1/3 time for logical conjecture based on overwhelming observable evidence.
Perfect summary of his stance. It wasn't about attacking religion, per se.
No, it was about religion trying to pass itself off as science in schools. That was his specific target.
He actually posted the letter online in May 2005 because the board didn't really respond, at least not initially.
And that's when it just took off.
Oh, completely. Became an internet phenomenon. Suddenly there were fan sites, loads of public interest, mentions in the New York Times, Washington Post.
Yeah.
It went global. Henderson himself seemed kind of surprised by it all.
You could see the community forming online pretty fast. That fish emblem parody, the FSM version.
Yeah, the source says that came from readers of the blog Boing Boing pretty soon after the letter hit.
And Boing Boing got really involved, didn't they, with that challenge?
Right, that parody of creationist challenges. They offered first $250,000, then they upped it to $1 million.
For empirical evidence that Jesus isn't the son of the flying spaghetti monster.
Exactly. Just highlighting the unfalsifiable nature of certain claims.
All this buzz obviously attracted publishers. Henderson got an advance, right? Something like $80,000.
Yep. From Villard Books to write The Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
And just to close the loop on that Kansas story, the source mentions that while the board did initially vote in late 2005 to allow criticisms of evolution, including ID,
they actually reversed that decision later, in early 2007. They rejected those amended standards. So the thing Henderson was protesting, it ultimately didn't stick, at least not then.
Okay, so it starts as this protest letter, goes viral. Where does it go from there? It started to develop actual beliefs, tenets.
Well, Henderson's official line is that the only dogma allowed is the rejection of dogma, which is, inherently contradictory.
Right, a classic paradox.
But despite that, the source lays out some common beliefs that you find in the gospel and on the website. And they're mostly parodies of creationist arguments.
Like the creation story itself. An invisible flying spaghetti monster made the universe.
But only after drinking a lot of beer, which is why the earth turned out flawed. It's a direct jab at the idea of a perfect creator.
And it cleverly mocks the way some people try to fit science into religious texts.
Absolutely. Pastafarians believe the FSM planted all the evidence for evolution, fossils, geological layers, all that.
And that he messes with things like carbon dating results using his noodly appendage.
Right. Just to test people's faith. It flips that whole test of faith idea on its head.
It's quite witty. And the afterlife description is memorable.
Oh, yeah. Heaven comes equipped with a beer volcano and a stripper factory.
Naturally. And hell?
Stale beer. And strippers who have STDs, again, sort of making a satirical point about, well, quality control, maybe.
Seems like it. Then there are the pirates. They're pretty central.
Huge. They're considered absolute divine beings, the original Pastafarians.
And the idea is that their bad reputation, the plundering and violence is just propaganda.
Misinformation, yeah. Spread by Christian theologians back in the day. Apparently, historical pirates were actually peace-loving explorers giving out candy to children.
Which leads into that famous graph Henderson made.
Yeah, yes. That's the correlation versus causation argument. He showed this graph where, as the number of pirates worldwide went down over the last couple of centuries,
Global temperatures went up.
implying, satirically of course, that the lack of pirates is causing global warming.
It's such a clear, funny illustration of a logical fallacy. He even used modern Somali pirates as, like, supporting evidence.
Right. Pointing out Somalia has lots of pirates and low carbon emissions. It's pure statistical manipulation for comedic effect, but it makes the point.
And there are specific practices and holidays, too.
Yep. Every Friday is a holy day. Prayers end with ramen.
A mix of amen and ramen noodles. Clever.
You've got holidays like Passover,
Lots of pasta eating, presumably.
naturally, and Ramadan, where you only eat ramen noodles. Plus, they encourage celebrating international talk like a Pirate Day.
Of course they do. And there's one around Christmas time.
Yeah, just called holiday. It's deliberately vague, no set date. Pastafarians celebrate it however they want.
And they see the general use of happy holidays as kind of a nod to them.
Exactly. The source even says Henderson thanked George W. Bush and Walmart for popularizing the phrase. It all loops back to that satirical critique of existing norms. So beyond these core ideas, the community also started generating its own, well, sacred texts, in a way. The Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is the main one.
Right. Published in 2006. The source says it expands on the beliefs, pokes fun at arguments against evolution, talks about history from a Pastafarian view.
And it encourages people to try Pastafarianism for 30 days, with the reassurance their old religion would probably take them back.
Did it sell well?
Yeah, the source says over 100,000 copies. Reception was predictable, praised by scientists and critics of intelligent design as brilliant satire.
And criticized by ID proponents as mocking Christianity.
Pretty much. Then came the loose canon. That was finished around 2010.
This was more of a collaborative thing, like from forum members.
Exactly. A collection of texts meant to be sort of analogous to the Bible. Includes things like, thou shalt have no other monsters before me.
And that half-an-ass story is mentioned too.
Right. And then even more recently, 2018, there's the New Testament of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, Dinner 2.0. This one's linked to some other pasta-themed groups.
Yeah, it's in that one.
Things like the idea that DNA is noodle-shaped.
Makes sense.
And lists of, it's better if you do's and it's better if you don't.
And some of those don'ts are quite pointed, aren't they? Like, don't put people in cages, don't hurt others, don't censor things.
Yeah, it has this sort of ethical or social commentary layer to the satire.
So beyond the books, it really grew into a cultural force.
Definitely. You see followers on college campuses. The website became a meeting point for people opposing intelligent design. They track events, sell T-shirts. People share their FSM visions.
And that image, the FSM reaching out to Adam, like in Michelangelo's painting.
That's Nicholas Jansen's adaptation. The source calls it the de facto brand image. It's everywhere.
There have even been stage shows. The Flying Spaghetti Monster Holiday Pageant.
Yep. And it's drawn attention from academics, too. There was a panel back in 2007 at the American Academy of Religion meeting,
Actually discussing whether an anti-religion like this could count as a religion itself.
based on a paper called Evolutionary Controversy and a Side of Pasta. You can't make this stuff up.
Brilliant title.
The Church of the FSM has also sponsored things like Skepticon, which features atheist speakers.
And they have a microfinance team on Kiva.
Yeah, with the motto, thou shalt share, that none may seek without funding, adapting their own scripture for charity.
The source lists other random appearances too, like a deep-sea creature nicknamed the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Yeah, a siphonophore called Bathyphysa conifera. Looks the part, apparently. There's a documentary, Pastafari. A Pastafarian gave a prayer at an Alaskan government meeting. Even a children's Bible published in Germany.
Wow. It's really spread in unexpected ways, and that spread has inevitably led to clashes in the real world, especially around religion and the law. The source brings up Russell's teapot.
Right, the philosophical argument that the burden of proof is on the person making an unfalsifiable claim. You can't prove there isn't a teapot orbiting the sun, but that doesn't mean we should believe there is.
And the FSM is used as a modern version of that.
Exactly. Richard Dawkins is quoted using it. He says, if someone asks an atheist why they don't believe in God or the FSM, the answer is you just go one God further than the believer. It highlights the arbitrary nature of picking one unfalsifiable belief over another.
And this wasn't just theoretical, it played out in that Florida school board fight.
Yeah, Polk County. The source says when they were considering teaching intelligent design, They got flooded with emails from people invoking Pastafarianism as another viewpoint needing equal time.
And it worked.
It seems to have contributed to them backing down, though one board member was quoted calling the emails ridiculous and insulting. Scientists, meanwhile, just kept saying, ID isn't science.
The movement has also tried to get official legal recognition in different countries. How's that gone?
It's been very mixed. New Zealand is a notable success story, at least partially.
They can perform marriages there.
Yes, Pastafarian representatives, or ministerianos, were authorized as marriage celebrants. The first legally recognized Pastafarian wedding happened there in 2016.
But that's quite different from the U.S. federal court ruling in Nebraska.
Completely different. That court looked at the gospel and basically said, this is clearly satire. It ruled that you can't base a religious accommodation claim under federal law on what it deemed a work of fiction parodying religion.
That Nebraska case seems key because it directly tackles that satire versus religion question legally.
Absolutely. And Pastafarians have kept pushing, using religious freedom and free speech arguments in various situations.
Like the student suspended for wearing pirate gear?
Right, in North Carolina, he claimed it was religious attire and protested on First Amendment grounds.
And there have been fights over putting FSM symbols up alongside other holiday displays.
Yes, the source mentions a statue in a free speech zone at a Tennessee courthouse. It went up, then came down. Inclusion in holiday displays in Virginia, attempts in Pennsylvania.
It keeps popping. It's not just the U.S. either. There was that case in Greece.
Georgos Loisos, yeah. Arrested for creating a satirical Facebook page based on a famous monk, but styled as Elder Pisticios, like the pasta dish. It sparked a big debate there about blasphemy laws.
And trouble in Russia, too.
A peaceful Pastafarian march was apparently attacked by religious activists, and the police ended up arresting some of the Pastafarians.
Wow. And even a student union in the U.K. banned posters initially.
Yes, though they apologized later. And in Germany, there were back-and-forth court cases about putting up signs for pasta mass next to regular church service times. Eventually, a city council just authorized it.
Okay, but maybe the most consistent legal battleground, the one the source spends a lot of time on, is headgear. Specifically, colanders in ID photos.
Ah, yes, the colander. That really became iconic after Nico Alm in Austria managed to get his driver's license photo taken while wearing one back in 2011.
He argued it was religious headgear, right? Kind of poking fun at the rules.
Exactly. Though the source adds a little clarification. Austrian officials later said religion wasn't actually the reason they allowed it for passports. But Alm's story definitely inspired others worldwide.
So people started trying it everywhere, with mixed results, I gather.
Very mixed. The basic conflict is always the same. The applicant claims religious freedom, saying the colander is part of their Pastafarian faith.
And the authorities push back, saying either Pastafarianism isn't a real religion, or the person isn't sincere, or that wearing a colander isn't actually required by the religion.
And the counter from the Pastafarians, or their lawyers, is pretty fundamental. They argue it's not the government's job to decide what counts as a religion.
Or to judge how sincere someone is, or which rules within a religion are mandatory. And they sometimes argue the satire is part of the point, part of the religious expression.
It's a strong argument. And the source lists places where people have succeeded in getting photos with headgear colanders, sometimes pirate bandanas, parts of Germany, the Czech Republic, Russia.
Several U.S. states, too. Texas, Utah, Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Arizona are mentioned, and parts of Australia like New South Wales and Victoria.
But then there are plenty of rejections. Belgium, Ireland, the Netherlands, their highest court said no. Some U.S. states like New Jersey, Illinois, Ohio, parts of Australia like Queensland and South Australia, Canada's British Columbia too.
It really shows how differently legal systems are grappling with this. What seems like a silly question, can I wear a strainer on my head for my ID photo, actually bumps up against really deep questions about religious freedom.
So, wrapping up with the critical reception mentioned in the source, it's pretty much split down the middle, as you'd expect.
On one side, you have scientists and people critical of intelligent design who generally seem to like it.
Yeah, they see it as, quote, a clever and effective argument, a masterstroke. Some say it promotes epistemological humility, basically. It makes you think about the limits of what you can claim to know.
The Associated Press summary quoted is pretty blunt. Basically, there's no more scientific basis for ID than for a universe created by pasta.
Exactly. But on the other side,
the ID proponents and more traditional religious groups are not amused.
Not at all. They call it things like a mockery of the Christian New Testament, say it's mocking God, or just lampooning the intelligent design movement. It definitely provokes strong feelings.
So there we have it. We've followed the trail from a single satirical email about Kansas science classes all the way to, well, a global movement. It's got its own texts, its own holidays, ongoing court battles about whether it's a religion, whether you can wear a colander on your head. It's quite the journey for a flying spaghetti monster.
It really is. And what's so fascinating, looking just at this source, is how something born as pure satire forces us to grapple with really big questions like, what is religion? What's the role of satire in challenging ideas? And where are the lines for religious freedom in our legal systems, especially now?
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. Maybe as you go about your day, consider this question that keeps coming up in these legal fights. If governments struggle to differentiate between what they see as a legitimate faith and something like Pastafarianism, maybe calling it an ordination mill, as one source mentioned, then what really does define a real religion legally? And who should get the final say? Definitely something to chew on.